Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So we're in Indiana on our way to Pennsylvania with a Walmart load. I don't know if get another load because this drops tomorrow night, so I might get one more load in before I get home for home time on Friday, but you'll be the first to know. So I want to talk about something, a place, but a thing that's named after that place. And this is keeping in mind that Memorial Day is coming up. But before I get to that detail, let me just say this. Memorial Day is about our servicemen who have been lost in war. My grandmother, who was born in 1902, used to call it Decoration Day because that's what it was originally kind of called, and before it was kind of codified into a federal holiday. And it started after the Civil War, but became a way to remember dead from all wars. And I remember as a kid, you know, I was certainly surrounded by people who'd fought in World War II, including my father, who was a Marine in World War II. And, you know, I knew people who had lost loved ones, whether it was sons in Vietnam or, you know, their grandfather or whatever in World War II Korea. And of course, you know, I've known people who've been lost when I was in the military and since, both in combat and non-combat stuff. And so it's important to remember that we're respecting our war dead. It's not a holiday where you say Happy Memorial Day, because it's not happy. I prefer, if you want to say anything in front of Memorial Day, I prefer to say to people, have an honorable Memorial Day. And what that means to me when I say it is honor that sacrifice. Honor that sacrifice and service and willingness to serve. Maybe go to a national cemetery. Just visit the graves. You know, many years we would take our children to the National Cemetery in Gettysburg, which is adjacent to the Gettysburg National Military Park. Now, there are clearly Civil War soldiers there. In fact, it's the location of the Gettysburg Address that was delivered in November of 1863 when Lincoln came to Gettysburg. But it also is the final resting place of service members who just died in peacetime, lived long lives, and are entitled to be buried in a national cemetery. But it's still important to visit and see those places and have, you know, a sense of reverence and respect for those who are interred there. I've been to Arlington National Cemetery several times. It's that cemetery started, I guess, during the Civil War when the Union had taken possession of Robert E. Lee's property in Arlington. I've been to some other national cemeteries. They're all over the country, so you don't have to go to Arlington or some well-known one. You know, but I would ask you to just remember that it's not Veterans Day. That's a separate day. That's on November 11th. This is about people we've lost in wars and their sacrifice. So it's a day of contemplation and reflection and appreciation. So anyway, that's that part of it. But the other part I wanted to mention is, you know, you can go to a national cemetery, but there are thousands and thousands of U.S. service members who never came home. They died in combat, they're buried overseas, or in some cases, like a vast majority of the crew of the USS Indianapolis, they're they're interred in the Pacific Ocean. The Indianapolis, the cruiser, was a heavy cruiser in World War II. It carried one of the atomic bombs from the United States to an island called, I believe it went to Tinian, which is in the same chain of islands as Saipan, where there was a well-known battle fought by the Marines. And U.S. bombers, specifically U.S. B-29 Stratofortresses, I don't know if that's the name of it, but B-29 bombers, like the Enola Gay is a famous one. They would fly from there to bomb the main Japanese islands. And so the Indianapolis' mission was secret. And so they kind of did what is called in the Navy independent steaming. They were unescorted, they just kind of set their own course. Well, they successfully delivered the weapon to Tinian, to the Air Force, or to the Army Air Force back then. And then they were just like released to kind of go do what they wanted to do. And I think they were on their way back to Hawaii. But because their mission was secret and they didn't have any escorts, they were kind of just independent steaming. Well, a Japanese submarine found them. And by this time, the Japanese submarine force wasn't that potent. But they found the Indianapolis just kind of steaming along, minding its own business without its, thinking it was far away from the combat theater. And she was torpedoed and sunk pretty quickly. But because of the secrecy of their mission and the fact that her position wasn't generally known to the Navy because of that mission, or to other ships, she went down and hundreds and hundreds of crew members went in the water. Most of them did not survive, and I haven't looked any of this up, I just know this. But it was a handful of guys that survived that. And in popular fiction, the Robert Shaw character in Jaws was a survivor of the Indianapolis. But the reason that came up in Jaws is because many men succumbed to being eaten by sharks. Some to delirium, where they just thought they saw fresh water and food under the ocean and just swam down and never came back up. So there's a lot of guys that never made it even back to dry land. Burials at sea were common in World War II in the Navy. A lot of Marines, same thing. They never made it back. So this Memorial Day, please take a second to think about that. Just a second. That's all I ask. Okay, so thanks for listening to that part. So real quick, I wanted to talk about I've talked about being a trainer and my philosophy and thoughts on that. But I want to talk about being a prime trainee. When I was going through training, I trained with a guy that's basically the same age as some of my kids, but he was an experienced truck driver. And one of the first things he said to me was, hey, here's kind of how my schedule works when I have a trainee. Normally I stay out 4 to 5 weeks, but with a trainee I'm supposed to only be out 2 weeks and then give you home time. And then I'll probably just drive and then, I'll come back and get you basically. And my response to him was, hey man, it's your truck. If you're gonna be out 4 weeks, then I wanna be out 4 weeks. I'm here to learn and I want to do whatever you do. And I think that got things off on the right foot because we ended up having a really good relationship, a really good working relationship. And I think it's important for trainees to understand that they need to be ready to be trained, okay? They need to be ready to be away from home, away from creature comforts. They need to get it through their head that some days they might not get a shower. Some days they're going to work really crazy hours, then drive, or drive, then work really crazy hours. If your trainer is up at 3 o'clock in the morning and inside a shipper, then unless they tell you otherwise, you need to be with them. Why? Because driving is like the easy part typically of a load, right? We get paid, we get paid to get it from A to B safely. But a lot of what we get paid for is what happens at A, the shipper, or as Prime would say, the 01, the 01, and what happens at the receiver or the consignee, the 90, right? If we don't get it right at the shipper or the consignee, it doesn't matter how well we drove in the middle. That might not pay us. There might be a claim, there might be, if our company can't get paid, then the drivers probably can't get paid. So it's important to learn the whole thing. I once saw a driver from Night who said that they got a ticket because they basically drove through the vegetation at a shopping center in California. And really, I think they got a ticket because they didn't meet the 40-foot rule in California. And if you're a trainee and you don't know what the 40-foot rule is, or the 41-foot, or and what I'm talking about is from the kingpin to the forward axle of the tandem. If you don't know those rules, right, it's your fault. And this person said on her YouTube channel, she didn't know how to. She was never taught to slide her tandems. She didn't actually know how to get it done. Now, I will say that she probably could have watched a YouTube video, right? But that tells me that when her trainer, because when I was at Night, we would slide tandems on almost every load, right? You got to move things around, right? You got to get the weight right. She didn't know how to do it, or claim she didn't, but that's probably not because the trainer wasn't outside sliding the tandems. It's because she didn't get out of the seat. And I've heard that about other trainees. Just because you're not in the driver's seat doesn't mean there's not an opportunity to learn to do something, okay? Learn how to deal with shippers. Learn what shippers want. Know how to slide the tandems. Know how to slide the fifth wheel, right? There are hundreds of things, little tiny things that you need to learn, right? And you need to be a sponge, and you need to put your trainer in the best position to teach you as much as possible. You don't want to be the person holding the truck up from leaving. You don't want to be the person that can't get out of bed in the morning. Okay? If you're going to get on somebody's truck, have the respect to be teachable, right? The other thing is, I've heard some trainers over the years say, well, I bring snacks and I make sure that they have this, and I make sure they have a sleeping bag or something. And I'm like, no. These people that are training are adults, or they're supposed to be. They need to learn to take care of themselves. There's people that are young, but you know what? It's time to put your big person panties on and just do the job, right? Because when you're on your own after 30,000 miles or 50,000 or whatever it is, right? Your fleet manager doesn't want to hear that you don't have any clean underwear and that you need to stop and do laundry. They don't want to hear that. It might be true, but they don't want to hear it. Go commando. Do whatever you got to do. Buy some Depends. But be able to be trained at all times. If your trainer is cleaning the truck, you're helping your trainer clean the truck. When I was a trainee, my trainer liked to keep his truck clean. I respected that. I didn't get his truck dirty unless it was absolutely necessary. I didn't leave trash around, right? And when he would stop at one of the terminals and get one of the vacuums, I would vacuum out the passenger side. Or if I was driving, I would vacuum out the driver's side and he would do the passenger side. I'd hand the hose across, or there'd be a second hose. Okay, that's how you are a good trainee. And that's an important relationship, because that person that trains you is going to be a resource for maybe as long as you drive. You can call them up and say, hey man, I'm having this problem. Can you help me? And I've done that. I called my trainer. I'm like, dude, I can't figure this out. Or what should I do? Knowing how to do, get your paperwork submitted properly. I learned that from my trainer. Knowing how to manage your logs. I learned that from my trainer. But there are a lot of people that go out on the road and they check that box that says they drove X amount of time or X amount of day, miles or days or whatever the metric is for that company. But then they still fall on their face. Okay? And if your trainer is like, hey, we're going to be out for 3 weeks, then just get over it. And just tell whoever's on the other end of the phone that you're going to have to be out 3 weeks. Now, if there's communication is super important. If there's some reason you need to be home, the second you know about it, you got to tell your trainer. You can't assume that your trainer is going to know that there's some issue at home and that they need to get you home. Because here's the thing, the trainer may be in charge of the truck, but he's not in charge of the mission, okay? The fleet manager is. So if you don't tell your trainer something, then they can't tell the fleet manager that they need to divert, they need to get a load going this way so they can get you home. Things come up for all of us. They're not going to be mad at you if you're like, hey, look, my mom is sick. I need to go home for a week. If you were on my truck and I knew that, I would send a message to the fleet manager and say, hey, the second we drop this load, we need to go towards this direction. Find me a load. Get me there. Okay? Or if it was somebody's just a birthday, graduation, and you're like, oh, well, we're headed towards where I live, and you're just assuming you're going to get home, don't assume that. I mean, sometimes I come within, 75, 100 miles of home, but I'm on a load, I'm crunched for time, whatever it is, and I don't get home. I try to, I want to, and I think a lot of people are like that, but you can't count on that. You have to communicate. You have to be a team player, because now you're on a team, and the trainer is the coach, but he or she needs you to execute, and you should have that same expectation for them. Their job is to train you, but your job is to be trainable. So I know that sounds a little bit harsh and maybe militaristic and stuff, but that's just how it has to be. And if you have that mindset that you're disciplined and trainable, you'll do way better when you get out on your own solo, and you'll be a good trainer. But don't put your trainer in a situation that's impossible. Don't fail to follow instructions. Don't be a safety hazard. Nobody wants to get killed trying to train somebody to drive this big ass piece of equipment that, like I weigh like 76,000 right now. I don't want to risk my life to train somebody that won't listen. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope it just maybe makes people think a little bit, both trainees and trainers, and that everybody's expectations are known and managed and met. So anyway, if I don't talk to you, if I don't see you before Memorial Day, have an honorable Memorial Day. Be safe out there, and we'll be back with you shortly. So take care. Bye now.